Oh, really? Well, sort of little break with everybody's judgment, and they started to like this, but if you still want to try to the zip bar, feel free to step up there and get your turn and talk something to lay on. So welcome. This is the start of our new small lecture series. I think we have a lot of great lectures planned for the full program in November, date, December. So keep your eyes for those. Now, there's something that we've had an update on the city affairs or what's going on in the community. So we reached out to our city manager, Jason Wisha, see if he could come and give us an update and maybe talk about what's going on with the police department, which has a new chief, which we'll talk about. So as you may know, Jason's been the city manager here for going on 6 years. He holds a master's degree in public administration. And prior to coming to Lake Forest, he was the assistant village manager for the village of Stoughton. A lot of practical experience that he brought to Lake Forest. And this year, police chief Paul Walder resigned after, I think, 3 years as the police department. And we were able to find Chief Burke, who was the police chief in Barrington, to follow up on Chief Walworth. He has 20 years of law enforcement experience. He has a master's degree in law enforcement and justice administration. He's also completed the Northwestern School of Police Health and Command program. And then last year he graduated from the FBI's National Academy. So it's great experience. So we have a lot to talk about today. So Jason, come on up and let's see.
Well, thank you for having me. Myself and Chief Burke here. I always enjoy the opportunity to come and do this. I'll try to keep my comments relatively brief. I asked Chief Burke to give an update both on public safety, community policing, and the new police station that you may be familiar with. I'll just remind you that this is meant to be informal. We have time left at the end for question and answer for anything that might be on your mind that we didn't cover, but feel free to jump in at any point. If we're talking about something and you have a question, just raise your hand and be happy to answer. So, level overview from my perspective of the city. I like to start all of these presentations with just an acknowledgement of our strategic plan. This was approved last year by the city council. And I won't run through all of the priorities in detail, but the reason I like to highlight this is that both our strategic plan, once it's adopted, is the document that drives all of the decision making, resource allocation, and other operational decisions from the city. But the document itself is very community driven, and I think it's a reflection of how Lake Forest city government has operated for many, many decades. Our processes are inherently community driven, and they are rooted in looking at the city through longer term time horizons. We are really, I think, the gold standard amongst communities for developing long-term plans and then using those plans to guide our decision making. Strategic plan. Again, this was approved last year. Those are the 7 main priority areas that were identified by the community. There's a lot of other goals and priorities within each category, but we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of its adoption, so we'll be talking a lot at the council level and with the community about the progress that's been made towards some of these goals over the coming year. And I think that's really important both to establish with the community a nexus between planning and execution and how our city operates, but it's also an important tool for accountability that the public can see that we are carrying out into priorities that were established by the public. Because our former finance chair invited us to be here today, I always like to take a quick moment just to highlight city finances. I'm not going to go through anything in great detail, no fund accounting today, but I do like to just highlight, and I think it's important for the community to know and have confidence that the city remains in tremendous financial shape. And again, that doesn't happen by accident. Current sitting alderman Ted Knows, who's here, the city council's commitment, again, in keeping with long-term planning of viewing financial decisions through the lens of how it will impact the community 10, 20 years from now, is really the reason that we continue to be in such remarkable shape. The other thing that I like to highlight, and I'm not doing it just because Jed's here, but I think again, one of the hallmarks of our city government is proactively addressing long-term financial liabilities. We've made tremendous progress over the last decade in getting ahead of the curve on public safety pensions. That's going to be a looming liability and time bomb for a lot of municipalities in the state of Illinois for the next 20 to 30 years. And we've really created a very sustainable model that will smooth out impacts to taxpayers, not just today, but for decades to come. We've also been very proactive and aggressive in addressing infrastructure and investing in infrastructure so as to reduce liabilities for future generations. And part of that, and I'm going to talk a lot more in a minute about projects that are ongoing, but one of the ways we've been able to help supplement those efforts is by obtaining grants. We have some really talented grant writers on our city staff and our engineering department. We've obtained over $21 million in grants over the last 5 years or so, and that really helps stretch our local dollars to get more done. But we continue to have tremendous success with that, and we've had, I think, record levels of capital investment over the last 9 years. Again, that's not just enhancing quality of life today, but it's also making for a more sustainable financial future for future generations. So what's going on today? You guys may have noticed there's a little construction happening in the central business district. I'm not going to sugarcoat or diminish, the level of disruption that this project has caused, but there is a method to the madness, and in fact, the planning for this project has been almost a decade in the making. Really started all the way back in 2016. We had numerous citizen advisory groups who help assist with the design process. The goal behind this project the goals were really threefold, as you can see at the top. The first, perhaps the most critical, but sometimes the least visible, was upgrading all of the underground infrastructure in that area. We had water mains that were approaching 80 to 100 years in age. They were deteriorating in condition. A lot of other utility infrastructure components that were at the end of their useful life. So I know that part of it is sort of out of sight, out of mind to the public, but there are critical investments that need to be made. Another important aspect of this project was improving pedestrian safety, particularly as you can see there, the intersection of Deerpath and Diggs Lane. We have had accidents there in the past, of course, with Sweets being such a community treasure that attracts a ton of kids to that area. Improving pedestrian safety was really important. Some of the design features you can see there was bumping out the sidewalks, putting in new bollards and more dedicated crosswalks to improve the pedestrian safety there. And then, of course, the final component to it was just the aesthetics and the beautification. And so that might be hard to visualize right now, but I would liken this project to anyone who's done, a significant home remodel or kitchen renovation. It might be a 12-week kitchen renovation. The first 10 weeks, you feel like we're living through a construction, site with no end in sight, and then all of a sudden, in the last 2 weeks, it starts to look like a kitchen again. We're really approaching that phase of the project. We are still confident it will wrap up by the end of October. Hopefully, you started to see over the last few weeks some more meaningful aesthetic improvements from the brick paver crosswalks to again some of the granite bump outs at the intersection. Another exciting aspect of this project, which is visualized perhaps right now if you walk down Bank Lane, but will soon be a reality, is the brick paved street that will soon become. It's an important corridor from Deer Path into Market Square. One of the unique features that we're excited about is the installation of removable bollards that will allow us, as soon as next year, to perhaps close off Bank Lane to vehicular traffic, say starting Friday evening through Sunday, and having it be a true pedestrian corridor for the weekend, where restaurants, other businesses can have tables that spill out into the street and do so in a safe manner. So again, end of October, there is a finish line in sight. As I was saying to a few people at the table, we were first measuring this project completion in months. Now we're talking about a completion date in weeks, and hopefully soon we'll be counting it in days. But we do appreciate everyone's patience with it. One thing I would note is that recognizing the disruptive impact this has had on our businesses, the City Council several months ago did approve a business disruption grant program for impact businesses on Deer Path and Bank Lane. What they did was take the project savings. The project came under budget, and reinvested that and gave that back to the businesses who've been impacted. So we've been working with them. I know it's been a long road for them too, but again, there is a finish line in sight, and ultimately they'll be the biggest beneficiaries of this beautification project once it's completed. Just a couple other quick capital projects I'd touch on before I turn it over to the chief here. For those who, anyone here who lives in Lake Road, we were warned we are going to be replacing two bridges on Lake, probably beginning this winter. The Lake Woodbine Bridge, which you can see in the bottom here, you were successfully able to obtain grants that paid for about 75% of the project cost. It's a very expensive project for us because we're replicating historic arches from the original design nearly 100 years ago. It added significantly to the project cost, but preserving features like that are important for Lake Forest's character and history. So that project, as well as a bridge that's further north on Lake Road, just south of Spruce by the cemetery, we're going to be replacing those at the same time so as to avoid having to shoot down portions of Lake Road twice. We're beginning the project around January with the hope that at least half of Lake Road will be down in Naples, Florida, or Scottsdale for a few months, and that'll buy us a little bit of time. But those projects are going to begin, as I said, in January, and probably in 7 or 8 months. There'll be a lot more to hear about that in the coming months. The bike path, I don't know if there's any cyclists in the room, but we just finished a couple weeks ago resurfacing another portion of the Employee bike path, really in Woodlands Academy going all the way south to our Old Down Metro Station lot. This is the second phase that we did after completing another portion last summer, not only resurfacing the bike paths, but widening that to make it safer as well. That was a critical priority identified by the community. Recent community surveys and strategic planning processes going to expand and enhance bike paths throughout the community. We're currently in the process of replacing the playground down at Forest Park Beach. If you go look now, there is no playground. We've removed the old one, which had really met and experienced its useful life. This was a real community-driven exercise to come up with the design for this project. We engaged with the public. I think we had over 650 responses that helped inform what the final design would look like, but that should be in and installed within the next month or so. We're excited about that. We, moving on to some of the other projects, have invested a lot in tennis courts and improving and resurfacing our tennis courts over the last year or so. You see a photo there of a complete reconstruction of the West Park tennis courts. We also resurfaced courts at South Park and Waveland Park. For those that may play, I trust you know that we have the pickleball courts that went in just a year or two ago over at Deer Path Park. Those have been very popular. We continue to hear about community desire and demand for additional pickleball courts. I think that's a bit controversial, just given the sound associated with pickleball. We have identified North Cross Park on the west side of town as another likely location for future pickleball courts because there are a lot of homes surrounding the field. Other than that, let's see, we're replacing the patio over at Gordon. Gordon operator, we have the Gordon Center, foundation operates independently of the city, but the city does own the building. We're responsible for all the exterior maintenance and improvements to the building. So the new patio is underway, I think, as we speak, and should be done soon. And then we've done a lot of sidewalk projects, and we continue to do those around our schools. We've had a significant influx of young families into the community over the last 3, 4 years. A lot more young kids walking to schools, a great problem for us to have. There were some areas where pedestrian safety leading up to the schools was identified, so we've been making a lot of progress towards those. Before I turn it over to the chief, are there any infrastructure or other project questions I can answer? Yeah.
Have you heard any more about
A dog beach? No, the question comes up, somewhat frequently, and as some might expect, it's a polarizing topic. There are people who feel very passionately about the desire to allow dogs at the beach. It is a wonderful amenity, and as someone who owns a lab myself, I know she'd love to swim down there every day. If I'm being perfectly honest, I think the biggest challenge associated with it is we have enough people in town who are not the most responsible dog owners and are not picking up after their dogs regularly. Their dogs need to be sufficiently trained off leash. I see it and experience it just when I'm walking my dog and see what's left in the parkways throughout some of our neighborhoods. When you're talking about the beach where people are walking around barefoot, it complicates it more. We also have had challenges in figuring out where exactly we would put it, so as not to impact those who want to go to the beach and may not be dog lovers and or some of the, clean up and environmental issues associated with it. But so that's maybe a long-winded way to say we continue to have the conversation, but I don't think there's anything in it.
And of course, the infrastructure. Did you discover anything that made more or less justify you all that?
I would say no, in the sense that, again, we're very thoughtful in our planning, so we had a very good understanding of what needed to be replaced. I think what we have found and looking at the condition of some of the pipes only validated that perspective was sharing at the table. One thing that didn't really impact the need for the project, but was just an interesting discovery, is that as we started digging up the streets, we had found a lot of abandoned infrastructure that had been installed and existed before the times these things were well mapped out. And so no one even knew they were there. And some of those were complicating for the project while they were digging. Some of them were pretty neat, like finding bricks underneath Bank Lane when there was one time that was a brick lined street. And so we actually saved and preserved some of those bricks and thinking about how we can reincorporate them into the project. But no, there were no major surprises associated with it. Again, it really covered the reasons we're doing it. I think what we found just validated that. I showed pictures to people of what the instance of the 100-year water being looked like, and probably the water, but they're perfectly healthy, but they're generally mineral deposits, but it certainly validated that this is the right project to do.
Went into the city council years ago. I seem to remember that the last opening the state works with actually all city pension funds, if necessary. So these percent and state pension which were yeah, probably the season change your thought and say that they're in the basic law and that's everything distributing it out through the state and the strength of that. Is that the case?
Yes and no. So no, in terms of aggregating all of the funds, there are legal restrictions that I think would prevent that, which is good. And I would say the city goes to great lengths. This is not meant to be a political statement, but to buffer and insulate ourselves from some of the decisions that happen in Springfield. Again, we operate in very long-term time horizons, looking at, I think that's 10, 20 years from now. It's not always the spaces from Springfield. So we work very hard to ensure that whatever decisions get made further down the road will be well protected from them. There has been a change, I want to say about 2 to 3 years ago, in consolidating the investment decisions amongst all the police and fire pension funds. Up until, and I have people in the audience who participated in this, up until a couple of years ago, the investment decisions for how the police and fire pension funds would be invested on an annual basis were made locally. We have local boards that are served with citizen volunteers who would manage those investment decisions. Ultimately was consolidated at the statewide level. The belief was that there would just be, lower fee investment fees associated with pooling larger amounts of money. So those decisions have been consolidated in a statewide board, which does have municipal representation. We locally control how the funds are invested to generate interest earnings, but the funds are still kept entirely separate from other communities.
Um, Understanding that most of the uh, issues are occurring in central business district program. It also affects people who are trying to travel on the boats.
Mhm.
Green Bay, trying to get to this very club through Connecticut. It's challenging now. I read this morning they're closing the Oakwood Deer Path intersection 2 weeks starting on the 15th of September. It's going to make this even worse. And the light that you temporarily put in at Westminster and Green Bay is a disaster. Somebody going south wants to turn left. They can't get through. Should be a three-way stop. But what does the city and perhaps the police force do to try to ameliorate it?
Yeah, and it's a fair point. And as I said, there's no way to sugarcoat that it's been a disruptive project. Some of the temporary closures needed, there's no alternative for it. I think in specific to the traffic light, the rationale for it was that recognizing Deer Path being a major east-west thoroughfare being closed would likely reroute a lot of traffic north to Westminster. And prior to this project, there was no traffic light there. There was only a stop sign at Westminster. With the additional traffic flow, without the traffic light, the concern was traffic would back up so much on Westminster. There was extend all the way down to the railroad tracks, the train station. There's no great way to do this. And so we thought through a lot of different options to minimize the impact, but we certainly know that it has been impactful. We eliminated the no right turn lane at Deer Path. It's sign at Deer Path and Green Bay. That would help improve traffic flow, particularly in the mornings and afternoons when people are dropping off or picking up students over at Deer Path Middle School. Unfortunately, the best answer I can give you is that we've only got about 6 more weeks and then we'll return to normal again. And the intention once the Deer Path project is complete is to remove the temporary light at Westminster and improve that.
I just had a question about the bridge. I live on Mayflower Road, 79 North Mayflower, but it's really the south. And that bridge is the worst thing to go. And it hasn't been my house for 56 years. And it hasn't ever been completely restored.
Yeah, and I think that's next. It's one of the next ones on the list when we look at identifying and prioritizing bridge repairs and replacement. Sure. Yeah.
So heavy vehicles that are going over, which is a huge goal.
Yeah.
We never used to have it before. Now it's pretty busy in our summertime.
Yeah, and I can say routinely, once every couple of years, we update, we bring in an outside engineering firm to do a structural analysis of the bridge. As we look to prioritize capital dollars for bridge replacement, we look at structural deficiencies first, and then sort of the aesthetic, deficiencies above. Sometimes the bridge, like when you reference, may have some deteriorating, design components, at the street level. Yeah, no question. And we know that's one that needs work, but it isn't, the structural integrity of the bridge is still strong. Whereas some of the others, we know they're at a point where within the next 5, 7 years, they need to be completely replaced. So we know it's on the list. Again, part of it is having limited, capital resources and needing to make priorities and trade off. The city's responsible for, so much infrastructure, different infrastructure categories, streets, bridges, sidewalks, ravines, equipment, of course, buildings and, fleet and equipment. And the city council is always going through the annual exercise of trying to prioritize the most important areas, knowing we have limited resources. And we always have the balance of wanting to maximize capital investments while, of course, keeping property taxes as low as we can. And we always use as I think, a talking point that's a source of pride for us, having the lowest tax rate in Lake County. People always, I think, would appreciate on one hand seeing additional projects get done, but nobody likes seeing property taxes go up. And so that's the balance. But that one I can tell you is very high on the list for within our bridge portfolio. There are no other questions. I'm going to turn it over to the chief. And as I said, be happy to stick around after and answer any other city related questions.
Thank you for having me. Some just historical pictures, one new, one old, obviously, of the Lake Forest Police Department, the officers that work there. A little bit about me. I was sworn in, it was a year ago yesterday. I was very fortunate to get this position. I spent over 24 years in Barrington. 21 of those years, I was, had the chance to be on what's called Northern Illinois Police Alarm System. It's a regional SWAT team. Lake Forest is a member of it. Barrington is a member of it. There's about 75,000 do make up this membership. It's one of the largest multi-agency SWAT teams in the country. No one county needs a SWAT team, but it's nice to have that ability to make one phone call and get the assistance as needed. A little bit about my education, some of the management schools I went to. I did learn a great deal at the FBI Academy. That was a unique opportunity to spend 10 weeks in Quantico, Virginia, with 198 people from 48 different states and 25 different countries. We took 25 classes, or sorry, 5 classes, and basically different forms of study, and then there was some physical fitness mixed in, but it's all about making partnerships and making connections with other people and having the time to talk with your peers from all over the world about law enforcement issues. You'd be surprised how many issues are the same all around. In my 1 year, some of the things that I've accomplished, so we've gotten down right away were we were understaffed when I arrived. We've since hired 5 officers. We have a couple more that are doing background on, and a couple more that start field training on Monday, which is exciting for us to get back up to fully staffed. And that kind of coincides with the schedule that we were working. Our patrol officers, when we arrived, they would, in a 28-day period, have 6 days off, and they would bid for their day off based on seniority. When you factor in we were so short, they were sometimes working 9, 10, 11 days in a row without a day off. It was sick time, which would cause somebody to work a double, and they would work more time than they needed, and then it would cause some, so it was a steamroll effect. And the nice thing about 12-hour shifts is the officers fall into a pattern. So they work Monday, Tuesday, they're off Wednesday, Thursday, and then they work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And the following week, they only work Wednesday, Thursday. So in a 2-week period, that's 7 12-hour days, and one of them they actually get leave. It's actually 6. But what it does for the officers too is it gives them a pattern, so their life at home is not being pressed. You're causing this stress at home because what they were doing before was an unknown set of circumstances. Beyond 28 days, they never had a day off. So if it was a baseball game, or a wedding, or a trip during that time, it was extremely difficult. And this is and help with the police department. We've sent two signed up for accreditation, so the police department will seek the accreditation the next year with the state of Illinois to be certified as accredited police department, which is something I'm really excited about. Here's just some pictures of some things that we do in and around town. Starting in the service officer in a block green to the right. It's a picture of Lauren and I. She's our social worker. And that's at Dickinson Hall doing a crime prevention talk for the senior citizens about how to shop online, how to be safe, what are some of the seniors can, they are the more targeted population in the United States as far as charity offset to their funds. The officers down there in the corner, we saw do a lot of charitable work, and right there, those are patches that we were selling for breast cancer awareness. The dog in the middle, that's Winston. It's the most important city employee we have. He's popular. He is trained. He's going to be a certified service dog in the coming year. To help some of the content that she does, and I'll put you a little bit. And that picture of lower left-hand corner for you is a graduation picture from the Citizens Police Academy. Before I get to community engagement, I think there's some things that you can touch on. Historically, with policing, we go back even to 10 years. In 2014, then President Obama appointed an 11-member task force to look into policing based on what was going on in the United States with police. And they came back with their 6 pillars that they pushed out to every police department in the United States. You know, pillars from building trust and legitimacy, policy and oversight, technology and social media, community policing, training and education, and officer wellness. So what was going on in 2014, I'm sure most of you remember, is in July of 2014, there was a gentleman named Eric Gardner in New York who was killed by a police officer in a chokehold. Shortly thereafter, in August of 2014, you had the incident with Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, that developed in widespread civil unrest across the country. And then you had Laquan McDonald, which is a little closer to home in Chicago, where there was a shooting in the city. So it kind of policing in my still. Some of it negative, some of it was probably due, which led to some changes. And then more recently in 2020, you had the Breonna Taylor shooting in Kentucky, and you had the George Floyd incident in Minneapolis. So what does that mean for us? It means that we're constantly looking at our training, our policies, how we take care of people, and things we do for outreach, and how we police. Directly in the state of Illinois, in 2020, the Illinois the State Assembly passed what's called the Safety Act, which put out that every police officer in the state of Illinois, in order to be certified, had to have certain sections of training in de-escalation, criminal justice law, use of force. Requirements. You don't get all your training mandates every 5 years in the cycle. They get you certified as a police officer. So it's a lot of pressure on us to make sure that we're hitting all our training benchmarks. And then followed by that, in 2021, which is kind of topical right now, state of Illinois passed what's called the Trust Act. And the Trust Act was a law passed that basically states every law enforcement officer in the state of Illinois, whether you're state, municipal, or county, cannot provide any assistance to anybody in anything to do with immigration. Short of an immigration agent showing up at the police department with an arrest warrant for someone that lives in the city, we can't even help them with federal control if they're doing any kind of industry in and around the city. So we're completely removed from anything to do with immigration enforcement and operations. So what do we do? And as far as community engagement and the pillars that I spoke of, every couple months we have a couple of events. We will set up shop in Hometown Coffee or Starbucks. It's a chance to interact with people and just get the questions that somebody might not know. I ask a police officer because they're too afraid to ask. And it's a great environment because it's very in a very natural setting. Yeah, with the chief sessions, those are just where Chief Andy Rick and I, he's the fire chief. We'll go to a different park or a coffee shop at all times in town, and anybody can approach us and ask us anything about public safety operations in Lake Forest. As far as youth engagement, we do a lot of work at Croy. Every fall, we play flag football. It's the Donut Bowl with the high school kids. And then in spring, we play floor hockey with the kids that are middle school age, and it's a lot of fun. What I like about it is the kids are interacting with us and we're having fun. They don't see us in uniform or out of uniform as somebody that they can't approach or talk to. We do crime prevention seminars. Detective Crucial and I have done about 6 so far in the year that I've been here, mainly focusing on the senior population to give them simple tips on how to be safe. Neighborhood policing, we've been doing that since before I got here. Every suburban policeman does to a certain degree. Community policing and neighborhood policing is what. So that's COP. POP just basically means problem-oriented policing. So you can focus in on a specific problem and try to solve that problem without just using the police department. For example, there were several incidents at Lululemon throughout the year. So I would partner with different agencies within the city of Lake Forest to see if there's things we can do. Can we upgrade anything in the building? Can we talk to the person that owns the building? Can we make some upgrades there? Talk to Lululemon staff about prevention efforts. We checked for the lighting. We were fortunate enough to get a grant, which I'll speak of a little bit, to improve the cameras in that area. So it's not the back-end problem, which is the police. It's reaching out, using our social worker, Catholic charities, and other people. CPA, I know there's a couple graduates in the audience. That's probably our most popular program. It's a 10-week program where we invite people into the police department for 3 hours every Wednesday night for 10 weeks. We teach them everything that we do day in and day out. So they get a behind the scenes look at the police department in terms of what we do for investigations, for patrol. They get a look at all the police gear, the specialized gear, and about the specialized units that every officer has kind of a special team or meeting that. We have officers that are drone pilots, officers that are technicians, they're taser instructors, they're self-defense instructors, they're firearm instructors. And then the officers in the Lake Forest Police Department also participate in other teams outside of the city of Lake Forest. So, like, I don't know, see that for long time. We're on a SWAT team where we have an officer that's on a multi-agency team that does homicide investigation in Lake County. We have officers that do accident reconstruction with the fatal harvest in Lake County. We have an officer on a burglary task force, so we like to get out there and see what the officer's doing. It's a great way for our officers here to learn from different things. And then we have our SROs. We have 2 SROs currently, one in the high school and one that works in the middle schools, and they do a fantastic job interacting with kids. Technology, I spoke a little bit about with some of you. We are embracing technology. That was also part of that recommendation. In the city, we have every officer is wearing a body camera. So the safety act says that every officer when you leave the station has to be wearing one of these. So mine is off right now. When it's on, it's going to constant recording. So if the officer would hit the center button twice, it activated it. It's recording video. And after a 30-second delay, it'll start recording audio. And this ties into the camera system in the car. Every police car has a forward-facing camera and a rear camera in the back seat and the prisoner partition to put somebody in the car. The thought process being that every call they go, the car gets a student speaking. When they're interacting with people, there's nothing that doesn't take place that's not recorded. And that's for transparency purposes, and it's also for court. So every interaction that's taken, if you pull somebody over and that person's arrested for DUI, you have the driving on camera, the in-car camera, the interaction at the door and the field test on camera, the place in the back of the police car, they're on camera. They go to the police department, and everything that's done inside the building, they're on camera until they leave. So if somebody does accuse an officer of, and it happens on occasion, an officer of being rude, they didn't do their job or something else happened. It's as simple as myself or any deputy chiefs. Let's look at the video footage and see if it's true or not. But it's groundbreaking technology. I can tell you that within the next 2 to 3 years, our body cameras will be upgraded. It'll look similar to this, but it will have to do it. Those cameras will have the ability to translate 60 different languages. So if the officer finds somebody on the street, if they're a Polish speaker or a Spanish speaker, the camera will listen to it, tell the officer in English what's going on, and when the officer gives a response, the camera will translate back in that language to that person, which is pretty fantastic. And then some of the other stuff is dictation. So if the officer goes to a call, there's a lot of things being said by different people. The camera can send through the AI, and when you go back to the police station, they can hit the dictation send button, and it will write clearly that was both people on page 3. Ton of technology in the squad cars right now. We're waiting 2 Tahoes. We just wanted to replace some old cars. You surprised how quickly this stuff adds up. There's modems in the car, cameras in the car, laptops, printers, all the equipment. It's pretty fantastic. So the car will record everything that is on here. You can do a little bit of the getting to the police station and translate it via cellular or to the police station. So the officers can only view the recordings. That's all they can do. And every time they watch the recording, it basically has to understand. None of that stuff can be altered. The only downside I would say with the body cameras is it does create a tremendous amount of range, and that anybody can file a FOIA, freedom of information request. There's kind of a sub industry where people do ask for FOIAs if it's kind of an exciting arrest. They take it, they put it on YouTube in order to monetize the situation that somebody wants to. It's something I don't agree with. We've talked to the state legislators about it. See if there's any kind of changes in the future. That black thing right there in the corner, that's a flock, that's an LPR. So those cameras are all over town if you haven't seen them. The city owns 12. There are 33 in action right now in the city of Lake Forest. So that's the public that we formed. So those cameras are great. If you don't know what it does, when the car drives by, this is a flock cam, takes a picture of the rear, the entire rear car. So it'll pick up the license plate, if you have any distinct features on the car, any bumper stickers or anything else. And you can also load in, our detectives can put stuff in there. So if we had, let's say, a theft in town, person fled, we knew what kind of car it was, we can enter that license plate and flock. And there are thousands of these all over Illinois. It will tell you everywhere that car passes. So you can see a pattern and also create a early warning system if there's somebody that we're looking for or a known burglary crew. Once they trip a flock camera, it sends a message to all the officers that are working in patrol. Just past this location going this direction. So we know if it's someone that's known to steal liquor from Jewel or if they go to Room 11 or something like that, the officers can go ahead of time. It stops. Fantastic tool. Going back to somewhat, Jake talked about grants. We did recently were awarded a grant through the Attorney General's Office for retail theft. We're going to place 4 newer flock cameras that have the ability to do pan, tilt, zoom in the business district. And what's great about those cameras is they are also have artificial intelligence built into them, so we can teach that camera if it's pointing at a certain storefront or storefronts that nobody should be there between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m., 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. The camera knows that, okay, it recognizes this, so if it sees activity or a person or a car there, it can send that same alert to the officers on duty that somebody's in an area they shouldn't be in. So it's a fantastic tool. Tasers are just, it's also part of Axon, but they're great tools as far as lock vehicle things go. Last thing anybody wants to do in uniform is have to use their weapon, and these are just different tools. That beanbag shotgun is basically what it is. Shotgun that shoots a beanbag that causes a tremendous amount of pain. The taser is possible disruption. So tasers shot at somebody, that's what the officer needs. Basically puts 2 probes in their body and it runs to get a certain amount of holes that cause the disruption. It's pain, but really anything on the brain is telling them to fight doesn't mean the person will fall over. We also have Live 911 coming soon, so that's through our dispatch agency. In the coming years, the officers, when they log into the computer in their car, that's where the calls come from. They can drop a geofence around the city of Lake Forest. So as they're driving around, when a call comes into the dispatch center, the officer will be able to hear the entire conversation you call. It's been tested in Schaumburg and some other places, and there's been success stories of somebody calling saying, "My husband's having a heart attack. I need you to get here." And the officer in Schaumburg literally happened to be 2 blocks away, came in with a defibrillator and saved my husband's life. So anything we can do to cut down the response time with the aid of technology, we're embracing. We also have officer and small fleet of drones at the police department. We utilize those during any kind of public gathering. You see us put signs up 24 hours at a time, because hours before anybody gets there, we're checking the rooftops and looking around on bases and what happened. So we want to make sure that things are clear They're also good at finding lost people. We're getting a newer drone that will have clear infrared technology into it, and we also now have the ability to bounce the feed from that drone to a smartphone, or in one of the new smart cards we're going to put together this fall, we have 32-inch TV in the back that if we're looking for somebody, we're going to get a live signal back that the officers can see. So it's pretty fantastic stuff. And then a drone program on steroids. Coming in a few years through our dispatch agency will be drones, the first responder program. So through the dozen towns that are dispatched to our dispatch agency, they're going to hire a significant amount of drones that will be purchased periodically throughout our geographic area. These are the larger drones that can fly really fast. With the thought process that if somebody calls 911 and says there's a lot of brush fire, there's a massive accident, there's an incident going on, the 911 operator can look at where that call is coming from, drop a pin on it, it will send the nearest drone to that area, and it will start sending live video to the officers that are responding, maybe even before they arrive at the scene. Sure, this is a hot topic. I'm sure it's the right people to be talking to. So, e-bike scooters, we're well aware of. I mean, years of it, we've had a lot of talks with kids. We've done a lot of PR, trying to push the emphasis of safety. We've done different things. We were actually interviewed for some Buck magazine, and my message to the parents was, please take a look at what you're buying your kids. These bikes are capable of going over 40 miles an hour. These kids are really smart. They know how to save. They scream. The throttle capabilities to make them go faster than bikes. So we don't. The officers running around grabbing kids and snatching them off bikes. It's not a good look, and I don't think it's the right message. So we're trying to do PR and education. We have started issuing citations, only about a dozen or so to kids that are riding bikes that are more powerful than are allowed to ride by law. And a lot of these kids are riding bikes on the street. There's been a series of some kids we've seen on bikes that don't have pedals, and essentially it's a motorcycle that's allowed. And they're not even 16, so it's dangerous. They don't know the rules, and they're on traffic and they're going 40 miles an hour. I don't think there's an appreciation for how fast they are. So we're working on this. The constant talk with Jason, Dayton City Council. It's still up for discussion. We're trying to do some enforcement, a lot of safety talk, some PR, and we're giving tickets out through partnerships with local vendors. If kids are wearing their helmet and riding a bike, bang, we'll give them a ticket for free and your streams. So this is the police department. Obviously, the top picture of our current police department. We share with the fire department. That building was built in the 60s. The bottom is the building that was purchased by the city last summer. We've been working on this really hard with the city manager and advisory council. Now, yeah, was helping with us. We had people that live in the city that were helping us with the design. They were checking in with our progress throughout this past year. We've gone through this building to figure out the best flow of the building, what needs to be in the building, what doesn't need to be in the building, and then we're trying to figure out what we need in the building in the future. Our target estimate is 25 million, and I can say that the 25 million number is not realistic for the city and make a decision to purchase that building for $3.5 million. But I honestly think this is probably the route every agency should be going if they could, based on the amount of savings. Our neighbors are going through the same thing in some different towns around us, and they're looking at budgets of anywhere from 45 to 55 million to build a building that's smaller in scope, less features than what we'll have in our production. So why the police department? We need to modernize police operations. That building was never designed for a modern police department. So what do I mean by that? There's so much technology that we use. We've outgrown it. We're bigger. We need a training space. I mentioned earlier the Safety Act that was passed in 2020. All this mandated training. Every police department is trying to get their people in the same classes. So certain police departments that are large enough to host a class for nowhere near being any police class. The biggest room can hold about a dozen people. We have to have at least 40 seats to be a host. So very often, it's getting near to their mandate that might be in a couple months. Send that officer to training, and it's usually happening in Naperville or Schaumburg or St. Charles, where adding on a member somewhere else, and very often the class is a week long, so that's a lot for having. And this new building we may have to make sure that the training room is large. Our training room will hold about 120 people if it's a lecture environment. And if it's a class, you here on Zoom, we'll hold about 80, which is going to be great. We will be the host agency in the future at Lake County because the building is located in a fantastic location. We have 60 in the highway. We have a large training room. We have parking for over 200 cars and we're near the highway. So it's a perfect combination. We've already had discussions with Northwestern, the other training agencies and some private companies about hosting training that we will get them. I don't know, 3 seats, but priority in these classes. Improved investigative support areas, streamlined evidence storage. So depending on the crime, our evidence room right now it's okay, but evidence room in the building will be 3 times the size opposed to 4. So why do we need all that space? Depending on the crime, there's certain evidence you can never get rid of that you have to hold for, and eventually that stuff adds up. So in our police department, in the new one, there'll be significant amount of storage within the same room that will just be empty. We've also left room for growth strategically throughout that building that I showed you a picture of. The building itself is 100,000 square feet. We're going to occupy about 56,000 square feet on 2 floors. So it's important that nobody knows what the future predicts, that if 20 years from now that we needed more technology and more space, if we added things that we're going to be able to be pushed around and move people all over. Secure transport right now, the facility is old. It's not in compliance with Illinois Department of Corrections. There are a lot of steel tables with sharp corners. If it's too small, the quarters are too tight. So for the new building, we'll take care of all of that all at once. They kind of go back to the accreditation. If I went through this accreditation process that we started, we were going to stay in a building, we would not be certified as an accredited police agency in the state of Illinois because our building is too far out. Another regional partnership. There is a 3rd floor that's going to remain vacant. We're not touching it as is. We've been talking with some people that have shown interest in our hopes that in the next year or so that people will be paying rent to be on the 3rd floor. Here's some exterior views. This is some mock-ups. If you notice in the lower right-hand corner is a big giant fence. So you made another great decision. We purchased a used generator from Pfizer and it no longer needed it. If we were to go a new generator, it would cost 5 or 6 times what we paid for it. And the lead time from date of order when you even see it would be 18 months. So when the building's ready, we'll transfer that generator from the Pfizer property to our property. We need it obviously because if power goes out, we need to keep operations going. As the building is 6 right now, it's all electric. So another decision we made was to bring a gas line in the building. That's some future components put in the building. We can switch over to gas, take a load off the generator. And then I can show you what. This is the only addition on the building. If you see where the 2 vehicles are on the lower level on here. This is the existing building. This will be new. So the new components are, if you look at the lower level, where that blue and yellow car is, that exists right now, that ramp to go down and take a left. The bottom level of the police department underground right now is parking for about 63 vehicles. We're going to take some of that area and make it storage, and then we're going to restripe all the parking spots so they're wider. The issue if you wear all this gear and you're carrying a duty bag and you're going in and out of cars, we want 10-foot spots so the officers aren't creating door danger to our stop. And we have room for storage. We're only parking for 38 cars and equipment. And if you went straight ahead, that lower level garage would be a new extra evidence garage for us. Very often, if we arrest somebody in the condition of theft, we arrested somebody the other day on a sex crime. We keep that evidence that before that area so the officers can work. They're not in the cold, they're not in the rain. We can always still work for the weeks. We police guard at the old station because there is no room. That ramp you see going up will be the new entrance to the Sally Port evidence processing area. So when the officer pulls in there, there's plenty of room to park 2 cars and an ambulance if needed in a contained garage area. And that'll be the back of the building. So when the officers bring somebody in who's in custody, they go to the back of the building. All the processing and all the cells will be in the back part of the building. So the lower level part you see here, there's for the drainage, where the plants go around there. Alderman Rich Walker had an idea during the process. He was also on the citizens advisory panel for this building. We were trying to figure out where to range. And one idea was, was that we would take a huge area of the parking garage in the basement, dig down 2 to 3 feet and create a range down there. There were significant issues with that idea, and that throughout the upper floors, you would hear the gunfire, there would be significant vibration, issues with noise. Just wasn't a good plan, and you are also wiping out valuable parking spaces, which is underground, which is very important for the SWAT cars, well, technology in them. So Rich came up with this idea that this ramp was going to be created anyways to get to the Sally Port to make it even with the first floor, because it's drop off in the back. To basically dig down 2 feet, and we're going to sink the range so the officers will actually drive across the range, and it was a really brilliant idea to integrate new building population for the range. Just image of what the new records body of the police department will look like in the future. You could say that most of the second floor we're leaving as is. There's a lot of offices up there. All the detectives are going to get their own office. And Lauren, I think I showed her a picture before with the dog. She can have her own space, and she does a lot of fantastic work. So it's great that they were saving money because of using these offices. We were talking savings of upwards of $1 million by reusing materials and keeping offices in place. And it's also important for Lauren to have her own space. Very often she's talking to somebody and sorting through issues that we go to a particular house, a repeated area, repeated instances, and maybe there's issues going on at home that she knows somebody else that's going through substance abuse or marriage is falling apart. If you're calling 911 all the time and the police keeps coming and it's an officer in uniform, they can only do so much in their uniform. Lauren does, she takes those cases and then she gets to run the problem using social services to any counseling and directing people in the right direction, which lowers the instances of us going repeatedly to a house. And right now she does those interviews and it's basically kind of a lobbying police. So in the future, we're going to expand what she does. This is just an image of a stairwell that will be cut into the police department in the middle to create more connectivity between the first floor and the second floor. And here's our timeline dating back to 2024, where they did a space needs analysis in the police department. And they came back that we needed more space. And if you fast forward up till now, so the bids are out for the project. The design is complete. The bids were on the original timeline due yesterday. There was significant conversation with the architect and the contractors going to bid on. They wanted more time. We turned back accurate bids, so we gave more time. So on October 17th, with the bid unveiling, we'll know the final number on about October 1st, and then that second Monday in October, we'll go for approval at City Council. So within a couple days after that. So here, or get in trouble from Dana, please, if you want to connect with the city via email, social media, or websites, please do. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hey, Chief, you talked a little bit about the school resource officer program and also school safety in general.
Sure. So we have 2 issues, one in high school, and then one that works between the junior highs. It's a fantastic program. They interact with the kids. It's really a great job. I never did it in my career, but the officers that did. You're a counselor. You're walking time. You could be a coach on occasion. You help them with issues that they're having at home, and really, it's that first line of defense in school. It's they can react to something a moment's notice, and then they have the opportunity to provide training in the school.
That behind the mental health issues.
It can. They do recognize, like, they very often for with somebody that they think is in crisis, and they can flag that person. And it's nice because you should be working with the counselor that in school. So it is an early warning program. They have to, by law, have a group of people that meet. If there's somebody that's in crisis or somebody makes a threat, that threat gets pulled, the student gets pulled, and they analyze everything from their social media, what's going on at home. Your mom and dad own the weapon. Is it secured? We can check to see if they have a FOIA card or a concealed carry card, and try to get the root of what's going on. Why is that person in crisis? There's all sorts of things going on in the world where it seems to be amplified. I think I noticed it during COVID. Even that's all this. COVID was like a force multiplier for all this stuff to the surface. You combine that with, politics, and everybody has the world at their fingertips with a smartphone. Not the greatest combination, but yeah, they are very much on the front lines of seeing problems at home with a child and then trying to convert to prevent stuff like that.
Well, for any questions, you know how to get a hold of him. He's very accessible.
Anytime.
Stop by the police station. Jason, you know where he is. So you might stick around for a minute. Maybe people have a couple of questions, but thank you very much. Jason.
Okay, I can grab it. Okay.
Yeah, that's yeah.
It's great. True story. I saw the that myself all and started fishing was to go. Right. So that's what I was after doing. When it's up so I don't make you okay, bring it up. What's the next always. Well, David Falls. What's that? There we went. Here, Yeah. Yeah, no job is all great. I approved it. Yeah, school. So when you're Sarah, yeah. This is the hard end, make off there.
Very, very.
We're seeing it.
So years to last one.
Yeah.
Yes, so looks great. Thank you. I work in Barrington. Really no difference. That's it. Yeah, so. Yeah, about that's what it is.
So, please, okay, you're.
Yeah.
I'm doing this.
Don't have.
No, I'm all over the place. Yeah, alcohol.
Thank you.
How do you meet that? Nice.
Yeah.
I'll just help. Wondering if I say, schoolers. I'm helping ones of the part of that. It's not a postman, sense, and so on, and she follows. It's like. So, we need to. There are some stuff you have to rest. Was taken. Plus, you can't get that in here. I'm surprised I was, yeah, absolutely. Heard your tone all about. Let's get on. Yeah. Let's make the direction. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I got one again.
Yeah, I'm sure it's down. Yeah. Yeah, again, for the techniques of the new process or long building strategy, clean those. Sure. Figuring it out, yeah, you don't even still. Since well, not. Well, no. This is next thing. Well, that's. I don't. I don't want to. They got spear. Well, actually, if you need anything, you got to be the problem. Yeah. From there, second time. That one is small. Like, actually, think it's up on that. Small. So, it was like, everybody. Yeah, all especially this guy, that's very slow. I was just so much I have some double three months, long units. That's speaking about the works for you. Yeah, really that. Yeah. We thought that it was a city. Yeah. Well, they didn't know or anything like this. Because there's not. Yeah. No. Yeah. I think. Where we worship the rest of the for example, like say on what's yeah. Yeah.